When you talk about people becoming sovereign and you talk about the use of, say, for example, Bitcoin to as a conduit to move to that state, and when you talk about man becoming the author of his own story, I'm curious to know that when you have each individual seeking their own truth. And I guess, some of the things that I wrestle with in my mind is like, what is reality and what is the
Mm,
truth? What is my truth? And am I
mm,
skewed to the degree that maybe I'm
mm,
convincing myself that my way is the right way? So you're always
mhm.
doing, like you said before, that self check in. You're calling
Yeah.
yourself out on your bullshit. You've got friends that can help you level up to the degree to say, look, I think you are or not on the right track. But when you have a collective of people doing the same thing, do you think that that initially would breed chaos, or do you think that it would naturally find an order or a level of harmony that would be almost like counterintuitive to the fact that, or to the notion that everyone's just following their own truth or their own what their version of the truth is? You know what I mean?
Yeah, this gets I mean, I can tell you're a philosophical guy because you're getting right into this. It gets semantic very quickly, right? Like when you're really trying to figure things out, almost every deep conversation, I think, boils down to a conversation about language, right? And we're trying to establish these points of agreement, right? When you invoke the word understand, do I understand what you mean by that, right? Like are we lining up on the actual definitions of words? Do we have consensus on them?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of argument in society is about that, right? It's trying to get consensus on specific and precise terminology. And so this one I actually have a bit of a bone to pick, I think, because this, and I don't mean to, I'm not criticizing you, but I would just like push back on the use of the phrase my truth, your truth, their truth, our truth. I think that's kind of bullshit, honestly. Like I don't think you can own the truth, right? There's a possessive intonation in that phrase, right? You're literally like well, my bottle, right? The
Yeah.
bottle that I own. There is no truth that I own. I don't, there's nothing, the truth. Musashi has this great phrase. What he says something like, the truth is what it is, and you must bend to its will or live a lie. Right?
Mm.
There's no owning it. There's no like my truth and your truth, and let's connect our truths and see what truth we find. Like, I mean, I get the sentiment, like you're trying to be authentic to yourself. What do you really want? What are your true desires or your true intentions? Like, I'm not trying to just like throw it out, but I want to be careful when we talk about the singular capital T cosmic truth, right? The state of reality that is, regardless of any perspective taken on it. Um, that is, there are certain things that are just inarguable. I'll go to Mises again, right? The axiom of human action: man must act. I think this might be the only linguistic construct that is utterly indisputable and irrefutable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll explain why. Because what he said, when he says man must act, when you expand the definition of that axiom, he's saying that man must purposefully use means to pursue ends. So again, we are these goal oriented actors, right? Action takers, if you will. We are constantly assessing the world for means to accomplish our goals or to bring us closer to our goals. And it's something you can't not do, actually. And the sort of proof for the axiomatic nature of that phrase is no matter what counter argument you try to make and say, no, 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 man does not have to act for reasons A, B, and C, you are actually using the means of words and argumentation to the end of trying to refute the axiom of action, thereby proving the axiom of action in demonstration, in action, despite what the contents of what you're saying. Like, so the demonstration speaks louder than the explication. And so this makes it like the truest thing we can say about ourselves is that we are these action taking or action oriented organisms, right? And we can't, the only exception to action, they would call it purposeful behavior. So the opposite of action would be non-purposeful behavior. So if the doctor taps your knee with a hammer and your leg kicks out, well, you didn't like pre-plan that, you didn't premeditate that. That was a reflex. So those are like the exceptions to action. But every conscious thing that we do, every time we point our mind at something and move towards it, by using means to pursue ends, we are basically engaging in action. And so that is that's the truest thing I think we can possibly say. And nobody owns that, right? And so this and the relationship to Bitcoin here is kind of interesting because there's a lot of frames of reference you can use to evaluate Bitcoin. A lot of this comes out in the metaphors we use to describe it. You often hear things like Bitcoin is the internet of money, or you might hear things like Bitcoin is digital gold. But ultimately, I think we're like, there's the old vignette of the six blind guys touching the elephant, but each guy is touching a different part of the elephant, so they're describing it differently, even though they're all touching the same animal, right? One guy's touching the trunk, and one guy's touching the leg, and one guy's touching the tail. I think we're kind of doing that with Bitcoin with language. Like you can describe it with a lot of different metaphors, but it's this entirely new animal, basically. And in the same way that the axiom of action is incontrovertible, meaning there's nothing you can say about it to make it go away or to make it not be true, right? It's almost like it's the point where language ends, if that makes sense, right? And we know we have this in our common adages: actions speak louder than words. Right? We know it. We know actions are more defined. We said it earlier, right? They define who you are. I can sit here and tell you about myself all day. Oh, I like this, I like this, I like that. And maybe you'd listen to me, maybe you'd believe me, but you're going to believe more what I go and do, right? The patterns you see me engaging in, how you see me actually acting and carrying myself in the world. That's ultimately what any of us will believe about one another. It's the highest signal indication of who we really are. And with Bitcoin, just like the axiom of action is this incontrovertible, inarguable, irrefutable language construct. Like, I think it's maybe the one thing that there's other, Ayn Rand has other axioms. She has like existence exists and consciousness is conscious, these other things. But even those I think are just linguistic, right? You're just saying like A equals A, basically. But man must act is different, right? It's you're actually describing what we do and what we are. And Bitcoin has this interesting property that it's the only record-keeping system. And again, this is just one blind guy touching the elephant here. I'm just going to give you one frame of reference of what Bitcoin is. It's the only record-keeping system, which you could say is literally a historical record of transactions. It's a ledger of transactions between Bitcoin users. And it's the only historical record that is unalterable. It cannot be amended or changed or censored or reversed or obfuscated. Like it's an unalterable historical record. So it is the most truthful thing human beings have ever created in terms of an actual technological product. And because it's unalterable, it's as incontrovertible or inarguable as the axiom of action itself, right? Like you can argue till you're blue in the face that Bitcoin was not sent from wallet A to wallet B. You can build all the graphs you want. You can, you could print money and fund fake science and just propagandize and say everything you want about this Bitcoin transaction not being true. But at the end of the day, it's on that blockchain and it's permanently emblazoned in this energy. They use the fly in amber as the metaphor. It's like the deeper it is in the chain, the harder it is to change. So that once it's a few confirmations back, it's basically permanent.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have created this truth machine of sorts. And, at the beginning of this, I said, no one owns the truth. You shouldn't say like my truth, your truth is the paradox here is that, well, no one owns Bitcoin, but the individual that owns a specific set of Bitcoin, like no one owns the Bitcoin network. It's like almost a public utility.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bitcoin that you do own is the most ownable thing in the world. Like it's the asset that is most difficult to separate from its owner in human history because it's pure information, basically. And so you have this weird, again, Bitcoin kind of breaking our language or breaking our conceptual structures. It's this global public utility that facilitates the transaction of perfect private property. And so it's this very truthful record-keeping system that none of us can own. None of us can change that history or manipulate it, but it allows us to own something that no one can steal from us, which makes it such a game changer. So anyways, I didn't mean to go off such a philosophical.
That's all good.
But when you bring up topics like truth and Bitcoin, the rabbit hole runs deep. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.